Welcome to Discourse Politics, the place for political and social commentary. Unfortunately, the two asteroids in November missed Earth, so we have to continue on with election month. Today's topic is a real audit, an actual audit, not a fake audit like they did in Georgia, but a real audit uncovered 3% of the votes cast were fraudulently changed or not counted for Trump. So, meet me by the fire, head to the Acropolis, and let's discuss. So this is an article by the Gateway Pundit, the link in the description below, and it goes into the investigation of 100 ballots. So what happened in Arizona was the Republican Party challenged and wanted an actual audit, a real audit, something where they could look at. And a judge allowed them to look at a 100 ballot sample, and what it found was that one vote was not counted for Trump for no reason at all. It just was not cast. It was not counted for Trump. And then they found another ballot that was for Trump, but it was changed over to Joe Biden. Now, the reason it was changed over is because this was duplicated votes, meaning that these votes were rejected by the machine and they had to be recreated by poll workers. What's amazing about this is that the poll workers are not supposed to be biased individuals, yet somehow in a 100 ballot sample where they were just supposed to duplicate the ballot to make it to where it could actually be read by the machine, when they had to do it by hand, they switched one vote and they didn't count another vote. There's something fishy here. The article goes on to say the GOP filed a lawsuit in Arizona, and the judge approved a random 100 ballot sample. So they took random 100 ballot sample. So when the GOP requested that the 100 ballots be looked into, luckily the judge sided with them and allowed them to review 100 ballots. There was essentially a 3% margin of difference, aka fraud, in between what was reported and what should have been reported. This video was what was put out by the Republican Party, the chairwoman Kelly Ward. Kelly Ward. I don't think it's Kelly Ward I think it's Kelly Ward, Arizona. But anyway, Kelly Ward, she put out a video, and so here it is.
Explosive news in our lawsuit. We got to examine some duplicate ballots, and to remind you what a duplicate ballot is, it's when there's a damaged ballot or for some reason the machine cannot read a ballot. So then election workers recreate that ballot. They duplicate it for the voter, and it's either fed back into the machine or created electronically. So these duplicate ballots, we got to examine 100 of them. It's a very, very small sample. But guess what? We found two ballots that were changed. One was changed from Trump to Biden. One was just taken away from Trump for no reason that we can find an explanation for.
And this is the sort of thing that kind of makes me angry. Now, I understand that mistakes can be made, but I can't for the life of me understand the mentality of somebody who would be willing to change someone else's vote. That just boggles my mind. But I know that those people exist, and I know those people are out there. And the truth is that regardless of what you believe, if you believe that the person that you're fighting against is the sole source of evil, then you are willing to do anything. You will put your morals aside and change someone's votes just because you believe that the person that you're changing the vote to is a better person and a better candidate. And I find that morally abhorrent. Now, truth be told, it could be a mistake. It could always be a mistake, but all the mistakes seem to be happening in one direction, which, they just seem to happen in one direction to favor Biden. So, it is what it is.
Now, back to the transparency. The judge said he wanted to err on the side of transparency, but the attorneys for Katie Hobbs, that has said Trump supporters are neo-Nazis, remember, and the Biden electors, they called a special emergency hearing with the judge to say, wait, those duplicate ballots that are examined need to be examined only by our attorneys, and it needs to be privileged, it needs to be kept secret from the public.
Now, imagine for a second that you're standing before a judge and you say to the judge, wait a minute, let's do this in secret. Let's not have this public. What would be your justification for that? Like, why would that even cross your mind to not have this be a public event? Because the whole point is, and this is why I can't stand the media, they're not covering this, right? They're not covering any of this. They're not covering any of the allegations at all. Now, they could quell some of the stuff. I have personally debunked some of the stuff that is being put out there. But you cannot have a system in which 70 million people or 80 million people or 50 million people or 60 million people don't believe that this was a legitimate election. You have to do things in the light of day. That is the whole point of having things like separation of powers. It's the whole reason that you have a free press. It's the whole reason that you have all of these rights that are enumerated in the Constitution, because we wanted to codify into law that these things need to be shown in the light of day. And here we are with a group of lawyers on the Democratic side saying, you know what, let's just do this in secret. Let's just keep this secret from the American public. I can't stand this. I can't stand that. I can't stand it. Anyway, on with the video.
Now, the judge did say, why would you want that? And then he refused their request, their ridiculous request.
This is probably why I could never be a judge. I would want them to clarify why. I would want them to clarify why. I would say, why do you want to do this in secret? I want you to give it to me. Give it to me why you want to do this in secret. And I'm not going to accept, well, because it would be a fast... I really wouldn't accept anything. I would want to hear the words out of their mouth, because we don't want to embarrass ourselves. Because we don't want the American public to think that maybe...
This shows us that these Democrats are anti-transparency. They are potentially covering up fraud.
Agreed. They are potentially covering up fraud. So I cut up that video. If you want to see the video, you can follow the link to the article and then watch her. That was a video on Twitter. It's inside the article if you want to watch the full video. So now back to the article. Of course, Donald Trump he put out that in Arizona, it turns out that 3% of the votes cast in the 100 count voting sample were tainted or worse. This would be, if carried forward, approximately 90,000 votes, more than we would need to win the state. So if this percentage were carried forward, Donald Trump should win the state by 90,000 votes. Now, here is the sad part. This was only on duplicated ballots. So if we go back and take a look at my election spreadsheet, we can see what Donald Trump is saying is actually not accurate in this case, because this audit was done of the duplicated ballots. And so not every ballot was duplicated, only ballots that had an issue being fed through the machine. So if this were held for all votes that were cast in Arizona, it would give him a vote count of about 90,000 votes. The question now remains, how many ballots were duplicated? And definitely every single ballot that was duplicated that had an issue being run through the machine needs to be audited 100%. There's no doubt in my mind that those need to be audited. Now the question becomes, is that enough to change the state? I don't know. I know it's definitely not all these votes. It's not all the votes here, but it is definitely something that needs to be looked into, however many votes were duplicated. But I think the two important takeaways from this is, one, that there definitely was probably by a poll worker at least one, or if these were random samples from all across the state, then this would show that there is definitely a bias somewhere, because every single bias seems to accidentally go towards Biden. The oops, we added an extra zero. Oh, well, that was an extra zero towards Biden. Oh, we found these 2 USBs in Georgia that weren't counted. Magically, they're from districts that were heavily, for Donald Trump. It seems that every accident is going one direction, and it seems kind of strange. So at the very least, this is 100% proof that there's someone out there who's probably trying to lean one direction, and it's a poll worker who's supposed to be neutral. They could have made an honest mistake, let's be honest, but it's more likely that with all these errors that accidentally go one direction, it's probably more likely that they are sympathizing with one side over the other. And then the other thing is this statement right here by Kelly.
This is good news because those media propagandists who say there's no evidence of fraud can now shut up.
And she's absolutely right about that. I'm sick and tired of hearing that there's no evidence. There's plenty of evidence. The question is does that amount to legal proof? That's always the question. And the fact that the media is not even intellectually curious about this incident makes me think that the media is dead. In fact, I know the media is dead. The media has absolutely lost all credibility by not even being remotely interested in these facts. It shows that they're absolutely dead. All media, Fox News, from Fox News all the way to ABC, NBC, I don't care. They're all dead. They're not covering this. They need to be covering this. They should be covering voter fraud. And at the very least, even if they put their little thing on it, which I keep saying, even if they put their little spin on it and said, right now there's only a little bit of evidence and it wouldn't overturn the election. Like, let's say that's their line. It would be fine. I would be fine with that. But they're not even covering the basics. And it boggles my mind why they're doing that. But anyway, thank you for watching. Make sure you like and subscribe. Share this with your friends. And I will see you next video.